I'm 17F and I want to start with saying there's even started and ended in a few months. Now that I'm graduated from high school, I feel it's better to talk about it. The situations couldn't be dealt with properly due my family not caring, and essentially thinking I was joking because apparently the ugly child can't ever be in a situation like this. The events were downplayed by my family. It started a month or two into my senior year. I had been camping out in my math class for lunch because the lunchroom was too loud. I honestly didn't even notice he had started doing it until he started up a conversation with me. I played into the conversation and we both talked about our parents and such. We also talked about the definition of the hood for some reason. We stopped talking once the bell rang for lunch to end, and everyone came filing in for the rest of class. After that we would talk from time to time, but that was all. From my side of things, I can't tell for the life of me when someone is flirting, so I couldn't tell that he had been flirting with me the entire time we talked. One day in particular, he went down to get his lunch and I stayed in the classroom playing games on my phone. After he came back, he sat down at his seat. Then he got back up, walked over to me, and put a popsicle on the table. He said he didn't see me eat ever, so he got me a popsicle. I thanked him, not thinking anything of it. Opened the popsicle, ate it, and threw the wrapper away. Later that day I was in my last class and heard people talking about how the guy I had been talking to had been caught playing with himself while watching a video he recorded of a girl from our school. It went over my head because all I could think about is how I was hungry. Anyway, he didn't get in trouble for that incident. After that he stopped talking to me. I didn't know why, but all he would do was stare at me during class, when he saw me walking to my classes, when I would be talking to my friend, and when I would be eating food. Whenever I would be with my friend and he was around, she would get protective and glare at him and make gestures at him. He meanwhile would be staring at us with anger and jealousy. He would do this even when me and her got food as well. No matter who I was around, he would have that look, and it continued to go over my head. He started talking to me again when he eventually started to say small comments about my friend and how she was overprotective. He even asked me why she was overprotective. I simply said that I didn't know. After a while of his comments and us just talking, it came to a boiling point. I was in class during lunch and he was in there too. He then started looking through people's bags, and me being non-confrontational did absolutely nothing, but I did take notes of which tables he went to for the bags. Once he was done and noticed me looking, he came up with something along the lines of, "Oh, my friend borrowed my headphones. I was just grabbing them." I just said okay. He then grabbed his bags, got up, threw away his food, and walked only a foot out the door before turning around and walking up to me. I looked up at him confused, and then he asked for a hug. I said sure, and he wrapped his arms around me and put his face in my hair. I just lightly patted his arm, not really knowing what to do. Then after the hug, he simply left. The day after, I was called out of class and integrated by the principal about what happened in my class the day before, and I told him what happened and went on my way. Turns out the guy had stolen $200 from someone and now had to repay all the stolen money plus another $50. That day was the final day he talked to me. Then my friend joined the class for second semester and basically made sure he didn't try anything. The rest of the year was him basically gathering info on me through old friends and toxic ex-friends. He even became friends with people I was friends with. He managed to find this stuff out: the car I went to and from school, into my favorite fast food, my favorite drink, my phone number, where I liked to hang out, what card games I liked to play, what video games I played, etc. Yes, there is probably more, but I really don't want to know how much he knows about me. This type of stuff continued until I graduated. I finally feel good about him not being around, but there are a few times when my heart drops and I get anxiety because of him. My brother brought home friends and said some go to my old HS, and I refused to leave my room until they left because I was afraid he would be out in my living room. So I learned recently that he had actually gone to middle school with me, but was kicked out due to perverted behavior. Then he was kicked out of his high school and came back to my district. So Marcus, I pray we never meet again. About 4 years ago, my wife and I did a short trip to Italy. We booked through a travel agency, so obviously there were some tourist attractions included in the price. On the designated day, we made our way to the Colosseum and got our tickets. Then, there was a short waiting period, because we got in a little earlier and our tour wasn't supposed to start for another 30 minutes or so. So we decided to take a short walk around to pass the time. We walked past the improvised souvenir shops. If you've ever been to Rome, you know them, apparently. Long story short, people will try to sell you small trinkets and knockoff merchandise out of smaller wooden stands or spread out on wool blankets, ready to make a run for it if police comes in sight, and got out of the main crowd around the entrance area. The second we reached a spot that was a bit more secluded, two guys walk up to us. They act all friendly and touchy from the start. They greet us in passable English, ask where we're from, you know the drill. And while they are talking, they are gifting us all sorts of smaller trinkets. A bracelet, a small chain, a wooden figure, supposedly hand-carved. It's a gift, they over-enthusiastically assure us. My wife is very uncomfortable, and I can tell. So I try to get us out of the situation as quickly as possible. But as the words "we really need to go now," our tour is about to start leave my mouth, the tone does a sharp 180. They get up really close, blocking our path. My brain immediately goes into fight or flight mode. Now, obviously part of their scheme, they demand a gift in return. The gifts they gave us? All apparently handmade by their relatives at home, forgot which country it was. Still, I tried to keep as calm as I could, to defuse the situation and make sure my wife is safe. I return every single item they gave us and calmly say that it was nice of them to gift them to us, but we wouldn't agree to their trade offer star. After I've done that, there's a really tense moment. In hindsight, I am pretty sure they contemplated robbing us on the spot instead then, since their scheme fell apart. Then, they just went away as quickly as they came. Had to take a minute to calm my wife, who was close to crying at this point. We quickly made our way into a more crowded area and wait there for our tour to start. The rest of the trip, we didn't leave the crowd too far behind anymore as well. I still can't pinpoint why it's this encounter specifically that stuck with me. I've been in other situations that were tense and or full of adrenaline, but something deep inside tells me to this day that this one in particular was too close to going south for my personal comfort. Asterisk side note, I am neither physically imposing nor would I have confidently been able to take on two assailants at once. Either they heard something, assuming it was police, since presence is very high around the Colosseum, or they decided it was not worth the hassle. To put a context to my story, I was having a sleepover at my best friend's house in summer 2019 like we always did. We were 15 at the time. She lives in a small village where everybody knows everyone. There was no weird people there, and it was a super safe place. Everyone was kind and friendly. It was about 10 p.m. and it was really dark outside. We were hungry and wanted to bake cookies, but they didn't have all the ingredients to do it, so we decided to go to the nearest convenience store. It was about a 5 minutes walk in the dark because there was no street light. We started walking towards the store talking and laughing about literally anything. On one side of the road there was a huge church built at the end of the 1800s. It was abandoned, but they couldn't destroy it because it was historical. There's also a huge parking lot right in front that had small orange lights. On the other side of the road, the store we had to go into. When we passed on the sidewalk in front of the church, we heard a weird classical music playing. It was like a whisper. We turned our eyes to the parking lot, and there he was. I have goosebumps just thinking about it. There was no cars on the road, nobody was outside, it was dark and cold. We saw a man, really tall and disgusting. His clothes were ripped, and he looked like he hadn't showered in months. He was dancing in the church parking lot, doing ballet figures to a classical song at 10 p.m. on a random summer night. When we saw him, immediately we changed sidewalks to be far from him. Our hearts were racing as we entered the store. We got our thing and went to the cashier. She made us pay, and we were panicked, so we told her about the man dancing in the parking lot. She was confused and went to the window to look, but there was no one. We were even more scared when we got outside. Neither of us had cell phones, so we couldn't call her dad to pick us up. We took a deep breath and decided to pass by the neighborhood that was behind the convenience store instead of the main road in front, so our chances of seeing the man again would be lower. We started walking in the dark, on the small roads with our bags. We were always looking around us. Once we reached the main street, we almost made a heart attack. The man was there, dancing on the sidewalk right in front of her house. We were panicking. I started crying quietly as we walked back into the neighborhood. My friend told me that she knew some people of our school were living nearby and that we should go to their house. So we did. He didn't believe us at first and didn't want to walk us to her house. It was almost 11 and he looked tired. But I think he changed his mind because he saw us crying. So he put it on his shoes and we started making our way back into the main street. We told him what happened as we arrived to the sidewalk and there was nobody. The man was nowhere to be found. He walked us to her front door as we thanked him before entering the house and locked the door. We told her parents everything and they just laughed at us, saying how we were being overdramatic, that it was one of the safest village and that we probably saw the wrong thing. We're both 19 now and we still have no idea what happened that night. But we stopped going out when it's dark. We talks about it sometimes and neither of us can explain who he was and what he was doing there.